She gave him money, but the maid gave him attention. In the end, his choice shocked everyone. In the bustling city of Enugu, nestled between red earth roads and lively markets, lived a wealthy businessman named Chinedu Okafor. He was known for his sharp suits, his booming voice in business meetings, and the fleet of cars that lined his compound. His mansion stood proudly on a hill with tall gates that announced both power and prestige. Chinedu's success story was admired by many who saw him as a symbol of ambition. Yet behind those gates, a different story was quietly unfolding. Chinedu was married to Ngozi, a brilliant and ambitious woman. She was a top executive at a telecommunications company, always traveling for meetings and presentations. Her intelligence was her pride, and her career was the ladder she climbed daily. Though she loved her husband deeply, her schedule often left little time for home. She believed that her success was also for the family, but Chinedu's heart began to long for more than just financial comfort. Their home was beautiful, but often quiet. The sound of high heels clicking on marble floors replaced the warm chatter of a wife greeting her husband after work. Dinner was usually eaten alone by Chinedu, with Ngozi's seat at the table empty more nights than not. She would return late, exhausted, sometimes going straight to bed without conversation. Chinedu watched this routine grow like a shadow over their marriage. To keep the house running smoothly, Ngozi had employed several domestic workers. Among them was Amaka, a 22-year-old maid from Nsukka. She had come to the city to earn money for her siblings' education, quiet and respectful, with a smile that warmed the compound. Her duties ranged from cleaning and cooking to making sure the house was always ready for visitors. She moved with humility, her wrapper tied neatly as she worked. Chinedu began to notice Amaka in small ways. One evening, after a long day at work, he returned to find her sweeping the compound as the sun dipped low. She greeted him warmly, "Welcome, sir," with a smile that carried genuine care. For the first time in a while, someone looked at him with attention, not distraction. It was a simple moment, but it planted a seed in his heart. Ngozi was on a flight to Abuja that night, preparing for yet another high-level presentation. She had left a note on the fridge reminding Chinedu of her absence and asking him to take care. He sighed, staring at the neat handwriting. The house felt too big and too quiet without her presence. Meanwhile, the aroma of egusi soup filled the air from the kitchen. Amaka was cooking dinner. Curious, Chinedu entered the kitchen and found Amaka stirring the pot, humming softly to a high-life tune playing from a small radio. The kitchen light glowed warmly against her dark skin, and the scent of pounded yam made his stomach growl. "You can cook very well," he said, half surprised. She laughed shyly, thanking him, and served him a plate with genuine eagerness. That night, it was the best meal he had eaten in months. As weeks passed, Ngozi's schedule grew even tighter. She often traveled for days, returning only to repack her suitcase for the next assignment. Chinedu, though proud of her accomplishments, began to feel abandoned emotionally. His complaints were met with, "I'm doing this for us, and just a few more years." But those few years felt endless in the silence of their home. Amaka, on the other hand, was always present. She noticed his moods, his preferences, and even the way he liked his shirts ironed. She wasn't intrusive, but her attentiveness became like a balm to his lonely evenings. When Chinedu had headaches, she would quietly bring hot water and a towel for his forehead. It wasn't love at first, but it was comfort, something his marriage was lacking. One rainy evening the power went out, and the compound was bathed in darkness. Chinedu sat in the parlor, the soft sound of rain on the roof calming his thoughts. Amaka entered with a lantern, and placed it beside him, offering him a cup of hot tea. "You shouldn't sit in the dark like this," she said softly. Her presence made the cold rain outside seem far away. Conversations started naturally between them. At first, they talked about simple things: her village, his business, politics, and the rising cost of Gary. But gradually, Chinedu found himself opening up about his loneliness. He confessed how he missed the days when Ngozi would sit with him under the mango tree, laughing about their dreams. Amaka listened without judgment, her eyes showing empathy. Ngozi, meanwhile, was unaware of the growing bond between her husband and the maid. In her mind, everything at home was stable because she had provided the best. She sent money frequently, paid school fees for Amaka's siblings, and maintained a picture-perfect image to outsiders. But she never paused to see the cracks forming inside the walls. She assumed love could wait until her career stabilized. One day, Ngozi returned home unexpectedly to find Amaka and Chinedu laughing in the parlor. They were watching a comedy show on TV, sharing roasted corn. Ngozi froze at the door, a strange wave of jealousy sweeping over her. Though nothing inappropriate was happening, the ease between them unsettled her. Chinedu stood up quickly, trying to explain, but the moment had already left its mark. That night, Ngozi confronted Chinedu, her voice rising with frustration. "She's a maid, Chinedu. Why are you sitting with her like she's your equal?" she demanded. Chinedu calmly replied, "She's the only one who's here when you're not." His words cut deeper than he intended. Ngozi felt insulted, hurt, and defensive all at once. Instead of reflection, she threw herself even more into work. "He doesn't understand my hustle," she told her colleagues over lunch. "One day he'll thank me for all this." But deep inside, her heart was uneasy. She had unknowingly created a gap, and now another woman was quietly filling it. Chinedu's loneliness continued to grow, and so did his attachment to Amaka. She became the first person he saw in the morning and the last before bed. She wasn't just serving him, she was listening to him. Her kindness was steady and her presence constant. Something in him shifted. The whispers in the neighborhood began. One driver told another, "Oga Chinedu day too close to that Maido." The security guard noticed how often they sat together in the evenings. Even some relatives began to raise eyebrows, but inside the mansion, Chinedu was too emotionally invested to notice the gossip. Ngozi received a promotion that required her to relocate temporarily to Lagos. She accepted without hesitation, confident her husband would understand. She packed quickly, kissed him on the cheek, and left. Chinedu stood at the gate, watching the car disappear into the distance, his heart heavy. In her absence, Amaka became his world. Weeks turned into months. Chinedu began to treat Amaka differently, not just as a maid, but as a companion. He bought her clothes, took her on errands in his car, and even trusted her with financial responsibilities at home. The household staff noticed the change. To many, it was only a matter of time before the inevitable happened. One Sunday afternoon, as the sun cast a golden hue over the compound, Chinedu called Amaka to sit beside him. They talked about life, and in a moment of vulnerability, he held her hand. "You've been more present than anyone else," he confessed. She blushed but didn't pull away. The line between master and maid blurred. As weeks passed, their closeness deepened into a quiet intimacy. Chinedu started coming home earlier just to sit with Amaka under the mango tree in the evenings. They shared stories about their childhood, dreams and fears, conversations he hadn't had with his wife in years. Amaka, though initially shy, found herself drawn to his attention and warmth. In the silence of their compound, something like love began to bloom. Ngozi occasionally called to check in, but her conversations were rushed and distracted. "I'm in a meeting. I'll call later," she would often say, hanging up before Chinedu could express his feelings. He began to dread her calls, not because he didn't love her, but because they reminded him of what they'd lost. Meanwhile, Amaka became the one who listened, who laughed, who cared. Her presence began to fill the emotional gap like water filling a cracked pot. The neighbors started whispering louder now. Market women gossiped when Amaka accompanied Chinedu to buy foodstuffs. "Is that not Oga's maid? See the way she dey waka beside one woman murmured. Rumors spread like wildfire through Enugu's grapevine. Relatives started calling Ngozi, hinting that things at home were not as they seemed. One day, Ngozi decided to make a surprise trip back home. She arrived unannounced, her suitcase in hand, expecting to be welcomed like a queen returning to her palace. Instead, she found Amaka sitting beside Chinedu on the veranda, serving him chilled zobo in matching tumblers. The laughter between them stopped abruptly when she appeared. The look in Chinedu's eyes said more than words ever could. That night, a storm brewed inside their bedroom. "Have you lost your mind?" Ngozi shouted, her voice trembling with both anger and fear. Chinedu, equally defensive, replied, "I'm tired of being married to a stranger." Their voices echoed down the halls like thunder. Amaka listened from the corridor, tears in her eyes, realizing she had become the center of their crumbling marriage. In the days that followed, the tension in the house was unbearable. Chinedu avoided Ngozi, spending more time outside or in his study. Amaka tried to keep her distance, but their connection had already changed things. The staff walked on eggshells, whispering nervously in the kitchen. The mansion that once symbolized success now carried an air of quiet war. Ngozi tried to rekindle their marriage through grand gestures, cooking his favorite meal, dressing elegantly, even taking a few days off work. But years of neglect had hardened Chinedu's heart. He appreciated her efforts, but remained emotionally distant. Every attempt felt forced, unlike the natural ease he shared with Amaka. It was like trying to fix a cracked mirror with tape. One evening, during a family gathering, Chinedu openly praised Amaka in front of everyone. "This girl has kept this house running," he declared proudly, smiling at her. Relatives exchanged awkward glances, some nodding in amusement, others in disapproval. Ngozi sat silently, her fists clenched under the table. That public acknowledgement cut her deeply. After the event, Ngozi confronted him again. "Do you even hear yourself anymore? You talk about her like she's your wife," she said bitterly. Chinedu shot back. "At least she's here." It was a truth Ngozi didn't want to face. Her absence had created a vacuum someone else had filled. Her tears flowed that night, staining her pillow. Meanwhile, Amaka struggled with guilt. She never intended to come between them, but she couldn't deny the growing affection in her heart. She prayed quietly at night, asking God to guide her, torn between loyalty and emotion. But Chinedu's constant attention made it harder to pull away. She was now part of a love triangle she didn't ask for, but couldn't escape. Chinedu's mother, Mama Neka, visited unexpectedly one afternoon. A sharp woman in her 70s, she missed nothing. She watched quietly as Amaka served food and noticed the comfortable glances between her son and the maid. Later, she pulled Chinedu aside and asked in Igbo, "Naim, is this girl your wife or your worker?" He couldn't answer. Mama Neka then summoned Amaka privately. "My daughter, don't let city life scatter your destiny," she warned gently. Amaka bowed her head, tears streaming. The older woman's words struck her heart like a bell. She respected Mama deeply and knew this situation could destroy lives if left unchecked. But Chinedu's feelings had grown too strong to ignore. He began discussing the idea of a second chance at love, hinting that he could choose Amaka if Ngozi continued to prioritize work. Amaka begged him not to speak that way, saying she didn't want to ruin his marriage. But the seed had been planted. Chinedu's mind was already wandering down a dangerous path. Ngozi noticed the growing defiance in his eyes. For the first time in her career, she took extended leave. She tried to bring back the old magic, movie nights, laughter, walks around the compound, but it all felt like reviving something that had already died. The warmth between them had been replaced by polite distance. One night, Chinedu finally spoke his heart. "Ngozi, I can't keep pretending. I need a wife who's present, not just a partner in business." His voice was calm but final. She stared at him, stunned, unable to speak. In that moment, she realized she had lost more than just time. She had lost his heart. News spread quickly in their social circles. Some blamed Chinedu, calling him weak for falling for a maid. Others blamed Ngozi, accusing her of neglecting her home. Church members whispered during Sunday service, pretending to greet her warmly while discussing her behind her back. Enugu's gossip mill spun faster than ever. Their marriage became the talk of the town. Amaka decided she couldn't stay in the house anymore. She approached Chinedu with tears and said, "Sir, I think it's time for me to leave." He begged her to stay, but she insisted. "This is not right," she said firmly, showing a strength he had never seen before. That night, she packed her things quietly. When Ngozi heard Amaka was leaving, she felt both relief and sorrow. She found Amaka in the servant quarters and said softly, "You're not my enemy. I was just never here." Amaka cried, and for the first time, the two women embraced. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was understanding. Both were victims of circumstance in different ways. Amaka left the next morning, returning to her village to start anew. Her departure left a strange emptiness in the house. Chinedu felt it immediately. The quiet now carried a different weight. He realized too late that he had built an emotional world around her presence. Now, both women were gone in different ways. In the weeks that followed, Chinedu's compound became cold. Ngozi moved into the guest room, focusing on rebuilding her marriage slowly. Chinedu tried to reconnect, but the damage lingered like smoke after a fire. They attended counseling at their church, where their pastor gently reminded them about communication and presence. Healing was slow and painful. Chinedu occasionally thought about Amaka, her kindness, her laughter, the way she listened without judgment. But he also began to reflect on how he allowed neglect and loneliness to lead him astray. His choices had nearly destroyed his marriage and reputation. In quiet moments, he prayed for forgiveness. The scandal had humbled him deeply. Ngozi, too, had her own journey of reflection. She realized that success without emotional investment had left her marriage vulnerable. She began working fewer hours, learning to cook again, and spending more time at home. It wasn't easy to balance her career and marriage, but she now understood what was at stake. Her presence slowly began to warm their home again. Months passed, and the couple started to find common ground. They planted flowers together in the garden, laughed softly under the mango tree again, and shared meals without the weight of bitterness. It wasn't like before, but it was a new beginning. They had both learned painful lessons. Trust, however, would take time to rebuild. Amaka, back in her village, started a small catering business with the money she had saved. She became well known for her delicious soups and jollof rice, attracting customers from nearby towns. She avoided gossip and focused on her dreams. Though her heart sometimes ached for the life she left behind, she knew she had made the right decision. Peace filled her days. One day, Chinedu and Ngozi visited her village to deliver some donations for a church event. They saw her at the market, radiant and confident, surrounded by customers. There was an awkward silence at first. Then Amaka greeted them warmly, showing no bitterness. They spoke briefly, and in that moment there was closure. Chinedu thanked her sincerely for everything she had done for their home. Ngozi, too, expressed gratitude. "You taught us something we didn't even realize we had lost," she said softly. Amaka nodded, smiling with tears in her eyes. It was a moment of quiet reconciliation. Back in Enugu, Chinedu and Ngozi renewed their wedding vows in a small church ceremony. It wasn't grand like their first wedding, but it was heartfelt. Family and close friends attended, clapping as they exchanged vows once more. "This time we'll walk together," Chinedu whispered. Ngozi squeezed his hand in agreement. They built new routines. Morning prayers together, evening walks, shared meals. Ngozi balanced her career with intentional family time. Chinedu learned to express his needs rather than bury them in silence. Slowly, laughter returned to their home. The story that once caused whispers became one of redemption. Amaka occasionally visited during festive seasons, bringing her famous egusi soup. She was treated like family now, not like a secret. The past remained in their memories, but it no longer controlled their lives. Their interactions were respectful and warm. Time had turned pain into wisdom. The scandal eventually faded from Enugu's gossip circle as new stories emerged. But for those who knew the couple, their journey remained a powerful lesson. They had faced the storm of neglect, temptation, and pride, and somehow emerged with deeper understanding. Their marriage was not perfect, but it was real. Love had been rebuilt, not from fantasy, but from hard truths.